Susan Sarandon became something of a punching bag of neoliberal Clintonites during the election because she said, look, I'm not going to fall in line. So during the general election, she was still very critical of Hillary Clinton. And she had given an interview to Chris Hayes where basically Susan Sarandon said, listen, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I'm going to vote for Hillary, not vote for Hillary, if I'm going to sit out the election, if I'm going to vote for Jill Stein. But I'll tell you one thing, I'm sick of this lesser of two evils kind of election. And, you know, establishment Democrats thought that was the most unreasonable thing any person's ever said. They all clutched their pearls and went, oh my goodness. But now she gave an interview to The Guardian, and she isn't flinching. She isn't backing down. And I want to give you some of what she said here. So, asked about her comment before the election that Clinton, in some ways, was more dangerous than Trump, and if she stood by it, she said, well, first of all, no, I didn't say that. You're misquoting me. Isn't that interesting? People always leave that part out. When they accuse her of saying, oh, you said Hillary's more dangerous than Trump. She says, well, actually, no, you're misquoting me or misinterpreting me. Here's what I meant. And then she corrects them. But inevitably, you'll find people who are inclined to hate her anyway say, no, that is what you said. But she's telling you that's not. But I don't like you. Okay, well, at least admit you're a hack then. Here's what she said, quote, not exactly, but I don't mind that quote. I did think she, meaning Hillary, was very, very dangerous. We would still be fracking. We would still be at war if she was president. It wouldn't be much smoother. Look what happened under Obama that we didn't notice. Hillary Clinton would have done it the way Obama did it, which was sneakily. He deported more people than have been deported now, and he got a Nobel Peace Prize. How he got a Nobel Peace Prize, I don't know. I think it was very important to have a black family in the White House, and I think some of the stuff he did was good. He tried really hard about health care, but he didn't go all the way because of Big Pharma. Okay, so putting all the noise about Susan Sarandon aside, just look at this quote. So, you know, it's presented to her. Hey, you said Hillary's more dangerous than Trump. How do you feel about that now? She said, well, not exactly. I didn't really say that, but I don't mind the quote. She was very, very dangerous. We would still be fracking, true. We would still be at war, true, if she was president. Look at what happened under Obama. All the same things happen, but it's done sneakily. So in other words, Obama takes two wars, continues the two wars, and adds 5 more interventions, which we can call wars. Granted, some of them are just drone strikes, some of them are airstrikes. In some places, it's so-called boots on the ground. But yeah, you could say we went from 2 places where we're intervening to fucking 7. So he does that. He increases deportations, and he gets a Nobel Peace Prize. So Susan Sarandon's point is, listen, the status quo and business as usual is not fucking good enough. And the fact that half of the left goes to sleep under a corporate Democratic president is not acceptable. So I don't want the deportations, whether it's under a maniac like Trump or it's under somebody who a lot of people like Obama or Hillary. I don't want the wars, whether it's under Trump or whether it's sneakily done under Hillary, where all of a sudden you get half the left arguing in favor of intervention when a Democrat pushes the intervention. That's the point she's making. And then she even goes as far to give, Obama credit on some things. Like, hey, look, I might not... I may have very strong criticisms of him, but, for example, and now this is me speaking, this isn't Susan Sarandon, but the GM bailout, that was kind of necessary and prevented a recession from possibly becoming a depression, and you can go on and on. Dodd-Frank, it was way too weak, but it created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is very important. And you can give examples of things that he's done that are certainly positive things. The Iran deal, the Paris Climate Agreement. So I think she's actually being a hell of a lot more nuanced than people are giving her credit for. And she's also right about on healthcare. Look, at the end of the day, we didn't get single-payer Medicare for all. They didn't even really push for it. They didn't even really push for a public option. Why? Big Pharma and for-profit health insurance companies donating to the Democrats and the Democrats doing their bidding. So the sense I get from what Susan Sarandon is saying here is, stop pretending like Democrats are angels who are right about everything in the cure and Republicans are evil. When the reality is, the Republicans are evil, and the Democrats are slightly less evil. And that I agree with her on. Now, finally, on voting for Jill Stein. Oh, actually, one more thing. There is a small part I disagree with Susan Sarandon on. On the Obama deportation thing. And look, I didn't even know this until I did further research, so I don't blame her. A lot of people bring up, a historic number of deportations. And they make that point as if like, oh shit, look, he's just as bad as the Republicans, if not worse, when it comes to immigration. That's actually not fair, because when I did more research, I found out that 90% of the people that Obama deported were criminals. Now, listen, we can get into the specifics of that, and let's say, for example, if a large chunk of that is like nonviolent drug criminals, then I disagree with Obama, and I think those people should have been able to stay in the country. And I certainly disagree with the 10% that were not criminals that were deported, okay? So let me be clear about that. But I do think that when you talk about that fact that Obama deported more people, for accuracy's sake, you should mention, hey, 90% of them were criminals. Because then I think that changes it. I think that's a fundamentally different thing than just deporting the most people ever, and if they weren't criminals, for example. So that's a small area where I disagree with her. Now, on voting for Jill Stein, she says, quote, "It wasn't a protest vote. Following Bernie wasn't a protest. I knew that New York was going to go for Hillary. It was probably the easiest place to vote for Stein. Bringing attention to working class issues is not a luxury. People are really hurting. That's how this guy got in. What we should be discussing is not the election, but how we got to the point where Trump was the answer." Boom. On that, she's 100% right. So, listen, I live in New York. I voted for Jill Stein. People have asked me, hey, do you regret it? No, I don't regret it. New York went to Hillary Clinton. And I was crystal clear during the election what my exact take was. I said, listen, if you're in a safe state, then vote your conscience, as people say. In other words, vote for the person who philosophically you agree with more. I've taken all those political tests that tell you what candidate you're supposed to be with. I overwhelmingly agree more with Jill Stein than I do with Hillary Clinton. That doesn't mean I agree with Jill Stein on everything, by the way. I don't. But I agree with her a hell of a lot more than I agree with Hillary Clinton. So living in New York, you could say it's either a luxury or it's the opposite, but I was able to go vote for her and not feel bad. Now, on the flip side, if I had lived in Florida, if I had lived in Ohio, if I had lived in a state that was a toss-up, just keeping it real with you guys, I would have forced myself to go vote for Hillary. Because in those states, your vote really fucking counts. And in those states, do I think, the lesser of two evils, even though it's a shitty situation to be in, it's almost a necessary decision to make? Yeah, I agree with that. And though I think Hillary was horrendous, I don't think it's equal between her and Trump. I don't think with Hillary we'd be on the verge of fucking war with North Korea. I know Hillary wouldn't have pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Okay, so there's a list of things. Neil Gorsuch is on the fucking Supreme Court. There's no way Hillary would have picked Neil Gorsuch. Maybe she would have picked a centrist person like Merrick Garland, and I'm mad, and that's not a lefty. But Merrick Garland is preferable to Neil Gorsuch. That's not a debate, okay? So I would have sucked it up and done the lesser of two evils votes in a swing state. It seems to me that that's kind of what Susan Sarandon is indicating here too, but I don't want to put words in her mouth. But the bigger point, the most important point is, she says we should be having a discussion as to why people thought Trump was the answer. Because that's the real discussion to be having. And that's one where you'll notice corporate Democrats and the establishment, they don't want to have that discussion. They want to have anything but that discussion. And what they do is, for example, they will harp away on the worst aspects of Trump supporters And the worst kinds of Trump supporters, fucking like Richard Spencer and KKK and neo-Confederates and neo-Nazis and the ones who are openly racist. And they're like, see? So they use those kinds of people as that's the only reason why Trump won, because there are so many irredeemable deplorables in the country who are just bad people and they need to be defeated. So let me shame people who voted for Trump, and then maybe they'll fall in line and vote Democratic next time. Well, congratulations on pushing people further into their corner and perhaps losing even worse the next time around. And this is why people like myself, people like Susan Sarandon, and others have made the case, no, you idiots, you're missing it. Sure, there's a percentage of people that are too far gone. There's just TFG. You're never going to get through to some people that are neo-Nazis or whatever who voted for Trump because of all the bigoted shit he said. Because a total and complete shutdown of Muslims. Because of we're going to do stop and frisk nationwide. Because of the Mexicans. They're criminals. They're rapists. I assume some are good people. Those people, I agree. We're not going to be able to vote for them. But there's a large chunk of Trump supporters who voted for Obama twice. What Susan Sarandon is saying is, try to fucking get those people. And the way you get those people is to not run somebody like Hillary Clinton. That's what Susan Sarandon is saying. Susan Sarandon is saying, listen, in the Rust Belt, Hillary lost by 10,000 votes in one state, like 40,000 votes in another state, or whatever the specific numbers were. And that's what really lost her the election, is the Rust Belt went for Trump. Well, we know, based on polling, that people in those states say overwhelmingly, I support populist Democrats over Republicans. Unfortunately, many of them support Republicans over corporate Democrats, but populist Democrats they support over Republicans. So in other words, the data shows that people who've had their lives destroyed by outsourcing, so-called free trade deals, that Hillary supported, by the way, her husband signed, they say, oh, the Democrats want to win us back? Okay. Have a Democratic Party built on Medicare for all, built on free college, built on a living wage. For fuck's sake, Trump voters in Virginia gave Bernie Sanders a standing ovation when he said, let's do Medicare for all, let's do free college, let's do a living wage. What does that show you? These are ideas that are so popular that they win elections. And Susan Sarandon's argument is, don't discount Trump's populism. Don't write off all of his supporters. We can win by convincing them. There are many of them who can be convinced. Some of them can't be. Many of them can be convinced. And that's how we win elections. So the discussion we should be having is, how the fuck did people think Trump was the answer? Well, some of them thought, I love the racism. Other people thought, I think this guy might actually bust up the establishment and look out for me. That's not something you're ever going to hear a corporate Democrat say. That's not something you're ever going to hear a representative of the establishment say. And Susan Sarandon is right. She's loud about it. And boy, does that piss them off. Because they want to try to make it seem like, here's the main claim of the people who are mad about Susan Sarandon. You ready? Trump is an aberration. He's a special kind of evil. And once you get rid of him, everything's fine. Everything's back to normal. Everything's good. But the reality is, Trump isn't an aberration of the American system. Trump is the culmination of the American system. Trump is the logical conclusion when the establishment has been screwing you over for so long. So that's the important point. Is that if you get rid of Trump, it's not like everything is hunky-dory. If you get rid of Trump, we still have all the conditions and framework and rotting system in place that gave us Trump. So we have to address the root causes. We have to address the root causes to fix this. And if we had a Democratic Party that was unapologetically fighting for Medicare for all, free college, living wage, New Deal, stronger unions, ending the wars, ending the drug war. If we had a Democratic Party that was fighting for those things, I think you would find the rise of the far right cut in half. You can cut them in half. Because typically, historically, people turn to extremes when they feel like the center, the establishment, is not working for them. Right now, the center, the establishment, is not working for them. So the answer is they're going to go far right, populist right, or populist left. And we all know populist left is the answer. It ain't populist right.